I don't have anything to say, but I do. Well, okay, look, I'm up because like I'm really curious to see if you could if the video like loads if you want it. That would indicate like what's helpful or to what we're doing, something like that. But you did direct me over to that like Al Sharpton was hosting this thing called Advancing the Dream, and he had an interview with Condoleezza Rice. And I was thinking about like how like the students like that come on, they had the panel after they did the panel discussion with the other students. It'd be interesting to know like what those kind of kids like who like are I guess who comes out of our like the colleges and stuff like think of someone like Condoleezza Rice. But for this reason, like okay, as it connects to when I said like it's a shame that people who are from historically underprivileged groups may have be getting the opportunity to go to college for the first time and are going to misperceive all like what's going on there. The teachers, a lot, the people teaching there aren't like serious people who may not are just like arrogant and losers who don't know what they're talking about. The students are like children with that have the baby boom parents and everything. That like it's a shame that they may misperceive that. But I'd love to know what people like that, like the students and the teachers, like what they think about Condoleezza Rice. Like, would they just say, like, well, she was, part of the Bush administration, so she's, a Republican? Like, is that what they would tell? This is a good example. Like, what would they tell a person, like, about an African American woman like that? What would they say she represents? And I think they think she's a conservative, she's a Republican or something. Like it was like whereas someone like me is she's I see what do I see when I see her? She's an expert on the Cold War. That's what I'm seeing her as. Like that's why she was in that position. Her background was like she's an expert on she's her field of expertise Dr. Rice, like her field of expertise, what she did her dissertation on was the Cold War. That's what I see when I see her. It'd be interesting to know what those people like spouting off like from the Democratic students thing or whatever that were like on the Hannity audience participation thing. Like if you were to ask them like. Because my point being that those are the kind of people who like are telling people like me are racists, and their parents wound them up to be like, your job is to help black people. What would they say of an African American woman like Condoleezza Rice? And they would say she's a Republican. I think is what they would say of her. She get all the people like she shouldn't be teaching and she shouldn't be influencing people because she's a Republican because she was in the Bush administration. And they would just tell them that. I think is what they'd tell them. Whereas, what am I seeing? Right, she's an expert on the Cold War. What's my point? That's the point. That's the point. That part of that, like running all the like conservative like people off campus or like not allowing conservative professors and stuff, would involve like giving like a misperception of a woman like that to people who maybe just got first generation has the opportunity to go to college. Would be told by these sort of would be told by that weird little group of students from Democratic students thing whatever who are like little kids but like right would immediately denigrate a woman like that because she's like a Republican. That would be what they'd say, and don't know that it's her field of expertise that put her in that position, and that that's who she actually is. What's my point? I don't have a point, but the fact that you directed me over to the Advancing the Dream thing, and I said, well, I don't have anything to say about like race, or wouldn't tell another group of people who I don't know what wouldn't do such a thing. I'm like a privileged white person. Like, what would I have to say about that? Why you direct me over there? Well, the one thing I would have to say is like the way in which an African American woman like Condoleezza Rice would be denigrated by those students that were then in the panel of that Hannity hosted, who are like the white children for the Democratic Party or whatever it is. She's just a Republican. They don't, that's my point. I'm up and waiting for the thing to load, and you direct me over to that, and I wanted to be able to say something about that show you directed me to, and the one after it. That would be helpful, and I'm thinking that what I just said would be like the best I could say. That would be helpful in the way you seem to think. Directing, as opposed to saying, what would I have to say about that guy? It's like, why did you direct me to that? That would be that's one thing I would say.